We're going to start chapter 3, price discrimination. So we're going to look at how prices are set differently to different consumers, right? So first, goal of this chapter is to understand 4 major types of price discrimination. Firstly, we're going to look at the bundling, and we're going to see 3 different types of 3 different degrees of discrimination. The first degree is perfect price discrimination, and the second degree is screening or non-linear price discrimination, and the third is market segmentation. From the word, we can know that perfect price discrimination is perfectly discriminated against every single individuals, and the market segmentation is if we have a whole market, we're gonna make it into pieces, right? And we're gonna make a discrimination against these groups. And third, we have the screening, which gives not by the individuals but by the options, right? We have option 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're gonna choose which option you like the most. So for the first and third degree, it's predetermined by the producer, but the second degree is what we decide which option we want to choose. So we're going to look into detail in a few minutes. And the second goal of this chapter is to understand the major differences among these types of price discrimination. Although there are different concepts, when we see it deeply, they look some alike, right? So we're going to look at how to to set which belongs to which type of price discrimination with real business examples. Okay, so let's start. Bundling is offering several products for sale as one combined product. Usually the price for the combined product is smaller than the sum of the prices of individual products. This strategy is very common in the software business, in the cable industry, and in the fast food industry, which multiple items are combined into a complete meal. So for example, in the software businesses, right, we can think about the Microsoft Office, right? So we don't download or we don't purchase a program per program. We don't purchase Word and then we purchase Excel and then we purchase something else's. We just buy in a one Microsoft Office bundle, right? And I don't know how much it costs, but like let's say it's $50 for the bundle, right? And if they're sold individually, maybe Word costs about $20, Excel about $25, and other databases into $10, right? So if we want to just purchase the Word and Excel, which we most frequently use, we can have the price of 2 Word and Excel will cost 20 plus 25, so $45. But in the bundling, right, if we purchase the Microsoft Office bundle, right, it will contain Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and other things. All of the bundles are in, so we get it for $50, containing maybe 6 programs, right? So if you're really looking for just 2, right? If you're happy with just 2 programs, you will prefer to have the price of 2 individually because it's $45. But if you need more than you are frequently using Word and Excel, but sometimes you need the PowerPoint and sometimes you need extra programs, then it might be better deal to buy in the bundle, right? So what is the advantage and disadvantage of bundling? So the first thing is, like we saw, right? If you need more than 2 programs, right? If you need sum of the product inside of the bundling, right? Then it will be what? Cost efficient for the customers, right? And for the company side, if these two are the popular products and others are not selling, we assume, then they can make it into like a little bit higher price and get rid of the all stocks, right? So this is happening all the time in the cable industry, what they call like Time Warner Cable, all the fires all the time. They say, oh, with your internet, right? If you connect with your TV, right? If you want to use the cable for a month, and if you connect also your telephone account, then in a bundle, right? You can get what in a net of $30 discount. Right? That's what cable industry is bundling about. And in a complete meal, right? If we order, I like that quarter pounder. So if we order a quarter pounder sandwich, it will cost us about like $6. But and right, and so for the burger, let's say it costs $7, and for the soda it costs another $1, and for the fries it costs about $2, right? So if we purchase it at individually, but all of it, we have to pay $10 for the meal, right? But the McDonald's or the Burger King offers, if you do a burger meal, right? I'm gonna give you the burger, soda, and fries, all of them at $8. So why don't you get it, right? So the advantage for the consumer is also, right, if you want all three of them, right, or at least you want more than $8 value, like you want burger and fries, you don't need soda, but it's what? Cheaper than burger and fries individually, right? So in the cost wise, consumer will be a little bit benefited. And for the producer wise, right, they can get rid of the stocks and make a little profit, right? So that was the advantages of the bundling. So now let's see what is the disadvantages, right? So what are the disadvantages? For the consumer side, right? For consumer. Actually, he was planned to not get a bundle, right? So he goes to McDonald's. All he wanted was a burger, right? So his budget was $7. But after all, he bought a meal and spent $9. I know, $8. $8. So what was the disadvantage to this consumer? Although he ate a little bit more, but $1 was spent excess of his expectation, right? So why this matters? We talked about the consumer surplus previous class. What was a consumer surplus? That was your what? Income negative total spending or total expenditure, right? So whenever your expenditure, right, is going up, what happens is your consumer surplus, your happiness goes down. So in the economy wise, with this bundling happening, the consumer surplus might get worse, right? And what about the producer wise? So producer, so if he could sell it individually, right? If he could sell the sandwich for $7 and $1 for the drink and $2 for the chips, so fries, then he could have made $10, right? So, but per like meal, so with the per one meal components, right? but actually he was selling at, I don't know, all together we're selling at $8, right? So per one meal, it's only $8. He could have made 10, but only 8. And what is this? This is the price, right? So let's look at the price. I'm gonna use the big board for now, and we'll come back to it. Okay. So when we have producer-wise burger, right, and soda. No, it's fine. So when we don't have no meal plan, right? No meal plan, then we can have $10 per meal equivalent, I will say. And yes, meal plan, right? You can have $8 per the meal, right? So how can we capture the profit of a farm? The profit equals to the marginal, not the marginal, total revenue negative total cost. So how can we capture the total revenue? It's price times quantity, right? And what about the total cost? Is cost times quantity. So the profit equals to P negative C times Q. So what does it mean? So Q represents the what? How many? So number of units, right? And this is per unit profit, right? So the profit is decided by per unit profit times how many we sold, right? So if the per unit profit decreases, then the total profit will be decreasing for sure. And in here, we have the price. First, let's assume the cost is $4 per the meal equivalent, right? Then what is the profit for individual selling? The profit for, let's talk about, let's say it's 1, right? When we are selling individually, then what is the price? Price is $10, and we are spending $4 to manufacture, right? So the unit price of first case is $6, right? So whenever you're selling those meal equivalent with the 3 components, you're getting $6 of profit. What about unit profit for case 2 when we're selling in a meal plan? Then the price is only $8, and still our cost is fixed as $4, so we're only making $4. So in a form wise, what is decreasing? What is the disadvantage of it? It's what? The profit decreases, right? And the profit plus consumer surplus together make the social welfare. So if you are bundling, right? And if you're not really happy with the plan, the meal plan, the internet plan, or everything, then we will suffer what? Social welfare loss. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to our concept. Okay, so let's look at the price discrimination from first degree to second degree. So we're gonna do first, third, and second. So there are reasons, and let's see why. So part 2, perfect price discrimination. The definition. It is the most extreme type of price discrimination where a monopoly seller has perfect knowledge of all his customers' preference. Each time the monopolist will charge a customer the maximum amount of money that he's willing to pay. Eventually, there's no surplus left for any customer, and the monopoly seller's profit is maximized. But this practice is too extreme and uncommon because the requirement that the seller has perfect knowledge of all customer preferences is too unrealistic to be satisfied. Okay, so let's go back to the whiteboard. So we have the concept of perfect price. Discrimination. So it says perfectly discriminated price for all individuals, right? And the assumption is the producer knows all demands, right? So how can we make the price? How the price is made is when we have the price and the quantity, we have a demand curve and we have a supply curve, right? So at the crossover, we have the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, right? This is when we don't have the monopoly. But in this case, we know all of the demand, right? The demand doesn't go along with the price or quantity, right? So this is about, let's assume in the market we have 10 consumers, right, of bicycle. So everyone needs bicycle and we have 10 consumers and there is only one manufacturer of bicycle, right? Then what happens? We start with, firstly, we are starting with monopoly. There is only one company to produce bicycle and there are, or 10 consumer has to purchase at this only company, right? And on top of it, we're assuming this company has surveyed or have a poll or quote on the consumer preferences, and he knows, oh, that consumer, right? Consumer number one needs that bike. Oh, I'm gonna charge him $700 because he's willing to pay up until $700, right? And for number two, he's gonna say, oh, I'm going to offer this bike at the price of $500 because he's willing to pay up until $500, right? So the company or the firm is charging you at your maximum price. This doesn't have to do with this demand and supply curve because the supply is limited to only these 10 consumers, right? So for example, in the bike, right? So let's continue with the bike. So consumer number one, right? Let's go into specific. So consumer number one, the company knows that consumer number one earns about $10,000 per month, and he needs bike to work, right? So bike for work, to go and come, right? To commute, right? And he was spending $1,000 for a month for car, right? And now he can spend up to $700 on bike to have somewhat saving of $300 for the first month, and afterward he wants to save $1,000, right? So if the manufacturer knows all about this information, the bike seller can make a bike and offer him this is a $700 worth bike, and you should get it because you have this car and you want to get rid of it and you can save this money, right? Then there is no reason for this consumer to buy it because he needs it and it's the reasonable price. And for consumer number 2, we might have different situation. He only earns like 5,000 a month, and bike is for, let's say, leisure, right? This was for commute and now it's for leisure, so he's only willing to pay up until $300, right? Then the monopolist will come with a $300 worth bike and offer to consumer number 2, right? That is the perfect price discrimination. So theoretically it works for everybody because it's what? It's custom made for everybody, right? So this is only $300 and this option will be different, right? And for consumer number 1, it will be $700 bike and the option will be different, right? And all to make it simpler, we can think about the order made. I don't know if this is not official word. So we can have a ordered to made productions, right? So if we don't have the manufacturer have the all information that is common, right? So we can think about the little close to real life example of ordered made productions, right? So for example, we're keeping at the bike, right? So if he knows everything, if the manufacturer knows everything and he knows my budget and comes up with like, if my budget is $700 and he comes up with a $700 worth bike, I'll be happy. But also we can order a bike that is worth $700, right? So we can have one. We can order a bike with my preference, right? Then what happens is it becomes one and only bike, right? In the world, and becomes more a price list, and I'm willing to pay my $700 on this bike, right? So there are 2 types of approach to the perfectly discriminated price. One is if the producer knows all of the information, or the otherwise we can give all information to the producer so he can make a special bike just for me. Okay, let's go back to a different price discrimination. Part 3 is market segmentation, which is called the 3rd-degree price discrimination. And this type of price discrimination is based on some observable consumer characteristic. What was different from the 1st degree? Did they have any observable consumer characteristic that is different from one consumer to another consumer? No, we don't know. It was all invisible knowledge and preferences, right? It was invisible, right? It's hard to tell, so we have to have the knowledge, right? But in the part 3, we have the observable consumer characteristics. We can have it visually distinguishable, right? So we can think of it as in the population, in the consumer pool, we have different type of people. We have type 1, we have type 2, we have type 3, we have type 4. Let's think of it as this way, right? We have different type of consumers, and depending on which group you belong, right, your price will be decided. So let's see. And a Queen's College charges different tuition fees based on whether a student is New York State resident or from the different state. So in this case, the observable consumer characteristic is students' residence, right? So if you are a New York resident, you will get a discounted, and if you're a non-resident, you will not get that discount, right? So what is the goal of this discrimination? Is to give advantages to certain groups, right? So in here, we give advantages to state resident, right? And in the case of MTA, give senior or disabled citizens a discount or purchase of the Metro card. So again, we're giving advantages to seniors or disabled, right? And we also have the parking lot pre-reserved for the disabled people or senior. And in my home country, South Korea, there's also a special parking lot, not only for the disabled, but for the women and for pregnant, right? So depending on your on your condition, your price is differentiated, right? Or your status or where you can park can be decided. And all of those are to give advantages to weaker people, right? So and this is also generally the case in the many museums, and usually the same model of the car sells at the different prices in the US and Japanese market. And moreover, this kind of price difference cannot be fully explained by the difference in the labor costs, taxes, and tariff. It actually has a lot to do with the difference in demand elasticity between the two markets. In this case of the market segmentation based on location. So let's go back to the whiteboard and let's make it a little clear. So how can we have the third degree segmentation? It's all about what? Grouping, right? So in the word, right, broadly, if we consider the word as a one square, right, we can have two groups. We can have US market and we can have non-US market, right? What do we see in discrimination? In the example is that the car price different, right? Usually the car price in the US is cheaper than non-US countries, right? So this is expensive in the non-US. What about the textbooks, right? US and non-US. Although most of the publishers are from the US, the textbook prices are significantly high in the US market. And so that is for like US and non-US segmentation, right? And we can go deep into the US segmentation inside, right? So what can we have? Before we talked about what did we talk about? We can talk about age, right? or your military condition, or what do we have more? Oh yeah, I got the government workers, we have the teachers and soldiers, Olympic medalists. Those are the group of people we consider are getting advantages from the market, right? So let's look one by one. So let's look at the age difference. What do we see age differences? How can we segment the age? When we go to the theme park or anywhere, right? We see for the seniors, it's, let's say, $5, right? And for any adults, it's $15. And under, let's say, 10, it's $5, right? So we see a price discrimination on the what? Visible condition of the consumer, right? And this can be decided without your will, right? So why this is happening? And the answer is about the what? Income life cycle, right? So if you look at the income life cycle, right? If we have a 0 right there, and this is the time, that is income, and we start at AZ0 and going to somewhere close to 100 or over 100, okay? So when we're first born, we don't have any income. Actually, we have a negative income because we spend money, right? So we spend the money of our parents or our guardians, and then the income increases as we getting older, right? And the income also gets decreasing, right, as we get even older, right? So our income has surplus. That point we have a what? Deficit at these points, right? So we're adjusting the price to the income level. When you're adult, you have the maximum income of yours, so you can afford is $15 per ticket. But when you're becoming senior, or when you were before the working age of under 10 or 15, then you are not a what, socially workable person, and we're gonna give you advantages of $10 discount. That is how this segmentation price discrimination is working. So also for the military, if you haven't served in the military service, right, it's gonna be like yes or no. If you're in or you were, right, in the military service, we're gonna give you advantages, right? And if you're not, we're not gonna give you advantages. So why this is advantages coming from? Because the military service are service for the community or the society, and we are what? Rewarding their services with this social advantages, right? And the government worker, teachers, all of these essential workers are getting pension after they retired, right? So we're giving them a little bit of benefit because they are the weak personnel or the people we need in the society, right? So that's about the segmentation. Okay. And let's move on to our last concept of screening or nonlinear pricing, which is called the second degree discrimination. So consider the following example. There are 3 different types of consumers: talkative guy, average guy, silent guy. They have different preferences for the use of cell phone service. However, when a customer comes to a cell phone store to purchase a plan, the sales clerk cannot observe his true preference type. It is not visually observable or cannot be proven, right? The difference between third and second degree is if we can tell the difference or not, right? For the third degree, we can tell it by for sure. For the second degree, we're not, right? So let's, when we're talking about the cell phone usage, right? 1 month in, let's say in this pandemic era, right? I'm not using the phone calls all the time. I'll use like 20 minutes of phone calls per month. So I might say I don't need that much of like what the cell phone plan for 100 minutes. But when it goes back to like normal, when the economy reopens and we go back to work, then I might need 100 minutes of a cell phone call plan, right? So it changes, and this is hard to tell from the outside person, the third party, right? So let's see. So however, the person knows. I know I use only 20 minutes, right? And I'm gonna use 100 minutes when it goes back, right? So I know this. So what they do is they have 3 plans, or they have multiple plans that we can choose, right? So they have a menu of options, right? The first plan is 1,000 minutes per month, and you're gonna only pay $69.99 a month. And the second plan is 600 minutes and $49.99, and the third one is 300 minutes with $29.99. Then the different type of consumer will make their self-selection. So for me, I'm gonna go for there's no lower, so I'm gonna go for the lowest plan for now and forever, right? If my phone call requires more than 300 minutes, I might go over, right? I might go to 600 minutes, but so far I can choose my plan on my demand, right? That is the second degree and screening, right? So what is the difference? For the third degree and the second degree, right? For the third degree, what makes the difference is the observable characteristic of consumer, right? Third degree. So it is what? Decided by third party, right? But second degree is non-observable characteristic, right? Non-observable characteristic, and we only give options, right? So we don't know, but there are different types of people, so we're gonna offer 1, 2, 3 option, and you can choose what you want, right? This is because you are a resident of NYC, the tuition is not $5,000, but you're gonna only have to pay $3,000, right? So this is decided by the third party. But the second is, if you want to have 2 lectures for the summer, or 3 lectures for the summer, or 1 lecture for the summer, your tuition is different, right? So that is the main difference between third and second degree, right? So third are market segmentation based on the observable difference in some consumer characteristic, while the underlying difference among the consumer cannot be directly observed. Screening offers consumer a menu of options to induce their self-selection. This is the most common type of price discrimination. So the most common price discrimination, the self-selection, we can look at more examples, right? So let's think about, now is a little slow business, but airlines, right? So when we go to travel, right? So let's think of it as US, right? So we're right here in New York, and let's say we have to go to San Francisco. San Francisco for business trip, right? Business trip, right? So there are 1, economy, 2, business, and 3, first class seats, right? So if you're going on a business trip and if your employer pays all the travel fees, then you are going to choose first class, right? If there is no restriction, you're gonna choose first class because it's the it's the best. Anyway, it's the most expensive, but the best comfortable seat, right? So they don't care about the money if it goes to the business trip. But what about if your personal reason, right? So if you're going to a wedding of your friend that is happening a week from now, right? So then your option is to take economy, and we can make it a little detail, right? We can have non-stop flight from New York to San Francisco, or we can have 1 stop or 2 stops, right? So first of all, if we're going to the personal reason, we're not gonna consider the most expensive or more expensive options like the business or first class, and we want to reduce our money with the condition. And if you're not in hurry, if it's in a week, right, you can go to 2 stops and save this is $300, that is, let's say, $700, and that is $500, right? So if you have a lot of time to go there, we can make 2 stops. It will take 20 hours plus, but you can save money on it, right? And if you're busy and if you don't think, right, this time is worth of $400, then you can go non-stop and choose $700, right? And if you're willing to pay, I cannot pay $700, but I don't want to spend 20 hours on it, so I might go for 1 stop and pay for 500, right? This is not forced by the manufacturers, right? They just give you options. In a broadly, we have economy class, we have business class, we have first class, right? And inside of economy, we might have a non-stop, 1 stop, 2 stops, right? And inside of it, we have different time schedule, right? Depending on the time schedule, the price changes also. So the second degree is just giving you multiple options to suit your preference. So why this is happening? Because number 1 type, right? Let's go back. The first degree type of the perfect price discrimination is hard to happen, and the monopolists can make the most of their profit when they are meeting all of the consumer demand, right? So they're trying to make, right, not bundling, they're not giving the discount, but they're giving you different options, right? From the cheaper one to the expensive one. According to your preference, you can choose, right? So the part 4, or the second degree screening, is most commonly used price discrimination in the market,